So most of us will spend our entire lives actively avoiding one genuinely terrifying question.
Yeah, the big one.
Right. And that question is, who exactly are you?
Like actually you, not the performance.
Exactly. Not the person you perform at work or, the person you imagine you want to be. Not even who your family expects you to be. Just who are you?
It's heavy.
It is. But that's why we're doing this custom-tailored deep dive today, completely designed around you, the listener, and this exact question.
And we've got some incredible material to pull from today.
We really do. The answers we've uncovered are drawn from this brilliant collection of readings, simply labeled Day 110, April 20. And the material here, it spans thousands of years of human wisdom.
It's a wildly diverse stack.
Yeah. I mean, we have Roman emperors, Stoic philosophers, modern sports coaches, spiritual masters, tech founders, all in the exact same stack.
What's fascinating here is, well, despite the massive gaps in time and culture and profession, all of these vastly different voices are circling the exact same gravitational center.
Which is what, exactly?
The central thesis connecting all of these sources is this stark reality that you are the variable.
You are the variable.
Right. You are not your circumstances. You are not your timeline. You're not the expectations of other people.
Wow.
Yeah, across all these eras, the ultimate conclusion is always that personal agency, your internal response to the world, is literally the only thing you actually control.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to make sure we aren't just, hovering in some abstract high-level theory today.
Right. This needs to be practical.
Exactly. This is a highly practical toolkit for you to navigate modern life. But to figure out how you are the variable, we first have to, strip away the performances we put on for everyone else.
Which is so much harder than it sounds.
It really is. There's this devastating quote in the material from the thinker, Malidoma Petrie-Somé. He implies that the moment we lose the thread of ourselves, we inevitably pick up someone else's.
We become imitators.
Yes, we become imitators. And an imitator is always running on borrowed time.
I love that phrasing. Operating on borrowed time is just the perfect way to phrase it. Because, neurologically and psychologically speaking, performing an identity that isn't yours requires an immense amount of background processing.
Totally.
You're constantly monitoring how you're being perceived, which just drains your cognitive reserves.
It's exhausting.
It really is. And the spiritual master, Anthony DeMello, he illustrates this trap of performance beautifully through a parable.
Oh, snakes.
Yes, the snake. So he tells this story of a snake that's been terrorizing a village, just biting people, keeping them from their fields, being a total menace.
The real problem.
Right. So a spiritual master comes along and somehow persuades this snake to take up the discipline of nonviolence.
So the snake earnestly decides to change its ways, right?
Exactly. The snake completely stops biting.
Oh.
But once the villagers realize the snake is totally harmless now,
Yeah.
they start hurling stones at it.
Oh.
Yeah, they drag it by the tail. The snake gets totally battered and bruised, and it eventually crawls back to the master to complain that, this nonviolence thing is a terrible strategy.
Which, fair enough.
Right. But the master delivers this incredible punchline. He says, "Friend, you've stopped frightening people. That's bad. I told you to stop hurting, not to stop hissing."
That is, wow. Think about how often we do exactly what that snake did.
All the time.
We totally mistake the form of virtue for the substance of it. We put on a costume. It's like when you go to work and you put on that overly cheerful, fake customer service voice.
Oh, we all know that voice.
Right. You are performing what you think a good employee sounds like, but it isn't actually you.
Not at all.
Your nervous system is working overtime to maintain that mask, and by 5 p.m., you are completely drained. You just aren't D'ing yourself.
And that exhaustion, it comes directly from the friction of the performance.
The friction, yeah.
The snake performed nonviolence rather than living it authentically. And the result was just total helplessness. This maps directly onto Lao Tzu's ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei.
Which translates to what? Effortless action?
Roughly, yeah, effortless action. It means acting so deeply in alignment with your true nature that there's no strain.
No friction.
Exactly. There's no borrowed identity. The snake that hisses to protect its boundaries without actually injecting venom is practicing Wu Wei. It is effortlessly being a snake.
But wait, whenever I hear terms like effortless action or, act without doing, my brain naturally pushes back.
How so?
Well, doesn't effortless action just sound like a really great philosophical excuse to be lazy? Like it sounds like permission to just check out and not try?
Yeah, that is a very common misinterpretation. And the material actually brings in the writer Robert too to provide some necessary firmness here.
Okay, what does he say?
He reminds us that you are always responsible for how you act no matter how you feel. Authenticity is not an exemption from accountability.
Oh, that's good.
Right. Knowing who you are doesn't excuse you from behaving well. It obligates you to. So wu-wei isn't laziness. Laziness is just apathy.
So it's about alignment then?
Yes, true alignment means you are genuinely yourself, but you take full responsibility for what that self does. You hiss because it's your nature to set a boundary, but you do not bite because you have mastered your impulses.
That distinction is crucial. It really means looking honestly at your actions and admitting when your strategy is just failing.
Which is hard to do.
It is, like the story of Stuart Butterfield in the readings. This was shared by George Raveling.
Oh, this is a great example.
It really is. So back in 2010, Butterfield was absolutely blindingly convinced that his company's new video game, Glitch, was going to be a massive hit.
He was all in.
Completely. He raised millions, hired a global team, bet everything on it, and the game failed completely.
Just bombed.
Total flop, no market traction at all.
And the psychological sunk cost of a moment like that is usually enough to destroy a founder. I mean, people tie their entire identity to their projects.
They really do. But Butterfield didn't go down with the ship out of, like, stubborn pride. He followed the evidence.
He looked at what was actually working.
Exactly. His team had built this highly functional internal communication tool just to coordinate their work on the failed game.
Right.
So he executes this incredible pivot. He abandons the game entirely, focuses completely on the communication tool, and he calls it Slack.
Which is just wild to think about.
Right. And by 2018, Slack goes public with a valuation of $19.5 billion.
What Raveling points out there is the profound difference between belief and evidence.
Yeah. Belief versus evidence.
Butterfield moved from a belief that his game would work to the hard evidence that his internal tool was actually valuable. And we connect this to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What is incredible is seeing this exact same cognitive framework applied 2,000 years earlier by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
Okay. The contexts are so different there, but the mechanics are identical, aren't they?
Precisely identical. Marcus Aurelius wasn't evaluating a tech company, obviously. He was evaluating his own mind during an actual, literal plague.
The Antonine Plague, right.
Yes. It was devastating Rome. And he was writing his meditations, basically examining his own intense anxiety about it.
And what did he find?
He separated the internal perception from the external reality. He looked at the evidence and realized the plague wasn't actually causing his anxiety. His judgment about the plague was causing it.
Wow.
Right, the external event just existed. The anxiety was a byproduct of his mind, and because it was an internal perception, it was within his control. He could, as he wrote, simply discard the perception.
But wait, society practically worships belief, right? We brand it as grit or loyalty or, sticking to your guts.
We do, yeah.
It's hard to accept that the very trait we're constantly told makes us successful is actually the bad guy here.
Well, belief itself isn't inherently bad. But belief that persists long after the facts consistently contradict it, that becomes a psychological trap.
It's like refusing to look at the scoreboard.
Exactly. Most of us are stubbornly loyal to a failed strategy or a toxic relationship or a false narrative about ourselves simply because we've invested so much time into it.
We're still trying to play Glitch.
Yes, we're still trying to play Glitch. Following the evidence requires the humility to say, I was wrong and I need to change course.
Which hurts.
It does. The Stoic philosopher Seneca and modern author Ryan Holiday discuss this in terms of what they call real goods.
Real goods.
Yeah, we cling to the belief that wealth and fame will make us happy. But the evidence of centuries shows that people who attain those things often suffer terrible buyer's remorse.
High fortune stirs great fear.
Oh, it's like drinking salt water to cure your thirst.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks. I mean, the belief says you're drinking water, but the evidence shows it just makes you sicker.
Exactly.
Following the evidence leads you to value true goods, like wisdom, self-control, justice, courage, because they actually sustain you.
Exactly. Real goods don't create buyer's remorse. Right. And once you drop the performance and you finally look at the evidence instead of your beliefs, a natural byproduct is this intense sense of urgency.
Because you realize time is ticking.
Yes. Because if you realize you are going in the wrong direction, you need to change course right now. Time is literally the one single resource you cannot gather more evidence to replace.
And Seneca offers a paradigm shift on how we view time that is honestly incredibly sobering.
What does he say?
We typically imagine death as a fixed point somewhere way off in the future,
Yeah.
right? And we are slowly walking toward it.
Yeah, that's how everyone pictures it.
Seneca corrects this. He says death is not in the future. It is actively racing toward us.
Oh, wow.
And more importantly, every single day that has already passed now belongs to death. It's gone. Time is the constantly depleting asset.
In the material, Coach Tony Dungy captures this feeling perfectly by referencing that iconic scene from Dead Poets Society.
Such a powerful movie.
It is. Robin Williams is playing the teacher, John Keating, and he takes his young boarding school students out into the hallway to look at these old photographs of past students.
Right.
He points at the photos and tells them that those boys in the pictures, who had the exact same dreams and hormones and beliefs that they do, are now fertilizing daffodils.
It's a heavy realization for a kid.
And then he leans in and whispers the mandate to them. Carpe diem. Seize the day. Make your lives extraordinary.
It creates a real fire inside you to realize your own mortality like that. And the writer G.K. Chesterton captured the specific joy of that fire beautifully.
What did he say?
He wrote about the trembling joy of saying grace before everything.
Grace before everything.
Yeah, not just saying grace before meals, but grace before swimming, before sketching, before opening a book, before dipping a pen in ink.
Oh, I love that.
When you acknowledge that any mundane action might be your last, gratitude and urgency become the exact same thing. It literally alters your neurochemistry,
Wow.
rooting you entirely in the present moment.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because when I absorb all this together, there's a real tension here.
There is, yeah.
On one hand, you have Seneca and Dead Poets Society pointing out that you'll soon be fertilizing daffodils, which honestly induces a mild panic to accomplish everything immediately.
Right, the ticking clock.
But on the other hand, the material gives us Marcus Aurelius and writer Jeff Waldman talking about planting seeds. They tell us to accept tiny, incremental improvements and to not wait for Plato's Republic to start living.
Which is a crucial metaphor. Plato's Republic was the philosophical concept of a flawless utopian society. It's a completely unattainable ideal.
Right. So how do you balance the fiery, panic-inducing urgency of Carpe Diem with the patient, step-by-step incrementalism of knowing you'll never live in a flawless utopia?
It's a vital question because without balance, urgency just devolves into anxiety.
Exactly.
The resolution the material offers is that urgency and incrementalism apply to two entirely different things.
Okay, how so?
Urgency dictates when we act. The answer is always right now, today, before the time belongs to death.
Okay.
But incrementalism dictates how we act. The answer is patiently, step by step. You don't need to wait for conditions to be flawless for society or your life to become some utopian Plato's Republic before you start living.
Right, you just start.
You just need to seize this one small piece of the day, right now, and make one tiny improvement. You plant the seed today with urgency, even if the tree takes a decade to grow.
But there's a dangerous side effect to all this internal auditing.
Yeah, there's always a trap.
Once you become hypervigilant about your own authenticity, your evidence, and your urgency, you can accidentally weaponize it against everyone else.
So easily.
Doing the internal work can easily make you rigid and, highly critical of people who aren't on the same path.
The material tackles this friction head-on with a remarkably painful observation from Winston Churchill.
What's the observation?
He noted that old people are always impatient with young people, and that fathers always expect their sons to have all of their virtues without any of their faults.
Oh, man.
We constantly demand perfection from others that we haven't even achieved ourselves.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because Ryan Holiday expands on Churchill's point, especially regarding parenting.
Yeah, the parenting angle is brutal.
It is. We punish our children for falling short of impossible expectations, completely forgetting that they have lived their entire lives in our house. They learn their bad habits directly from watching us.
Yep.
It's exactly like getting furious at your dog for begging at the dinner table when you are the one who has been slipping at scraps for 3 years. You taught it the behavior you are now punishing.
There's a perfect analogy.
And this applies to coworkers, friends, everyone. I really want to ask you listening to reflect on this directly right now. Think about a conflict you're in right now. Who in your life are you currently prosecuting for a flaw that you actually share?
That cognitive dissonance is just universal. And Seneca's solution to this hypocrisy is to adopt what we can call the public defender mindset.
The public defender mindset.
Yeah. When people frustrate us, our psychological default is to give them the most uncharitable reading possible. We assume they are being malicious or incompetent or lazy.
Right, we assume the worst.
Seneca says, you must actively fight to see their side. You must act like a public defender arguing the case for an absent defendant, even against your own irritation.
That feels incredibly difficult in the heat of the moment.
It takes immense discipline, but it is deeply practical. And frankly, it's a selfish energy-saving tactic.
How is it selfish?
Well, Holiday observed that when you give people the presumption of innocence, your own nervous system relaxes. You aren't wasting cognitive calories being furiously indignant.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Marcus Aurelius and his biographer, Ernest Renan, point out that this is the ultimate rule of a good life. Be strictly disciplined with yourself, but be immensely understanding of others.
Because you only control you.
Exactly. You cannot enforce your personal philosophy on your neighbor. The only territory you actually have jurisdiction over is yourself.
Which culminates in the final overarching realization about our daily lives.
Yes, it all ties together here.
The way we govern ourselves, the way we forgive others, the way we pivot based on evidence, it all rests on the understanding that our emotional state is not a byproduct of how our day went.
Right.
Our emotional state is a deliberate choice. There is a quote from Robert Louis Stevenson in the material that is genuinely shocking at first glance.
It caught me off guard, too.
He wrote, "There is no duty we so much underrate as the duty of being happy."
This raises an important question, though, about the distinction between circumstances and suffering.
Yeah, because it sounds a bit harsh.
Stevenson isn't victim blaming here. Bad things happen, tragedies occur, and the external facts of a Tuesday can be objectively stressful.
But calling happiness a duty implies obligation. It implies that if we are having a miserable Tuesday, it is somehow our responsibility.
The anthropologist Carlos Castaneda provides the stark math behind Stevenson's concept.
Math.
Yeah. Castaneda wrote, "We either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves strong. The amount of work is the same."
The amount of work is the same. Wow.
Choosing to ruminate, to complain, to assume the worst of people, that is an active cognitive process. It burns energy. It takes exactly as much psychological effort to passively suffer as it does to actively search for Chesterton's grace before everything.
If passive suffering and active strength burn the exact same amount of calories,
Which they do.
then the immediate question becomes how to intercept that process before we waste the energy. Like, how do we catch ourselves doing the exhausting work of misery?
The material points to the intensely practical tool of journaling.
Just writing it down.
Yeah, and there is a real neurological mechanism at play here. When you are just sitting there thinking about how miserable you are trapped in the emotional center of your brain, the amygdala.
You're just wallowing in it.
You are just experiencing the emotion. But the physical act of writing things down, translating a nebulous feeling into structured language, forces your prefrontal cortex to engage.
Oh, so you literally shift brain state.
Exactly. You move from experiencing the emotion to observing it. As the reading notes, paper is a lot more patient than people.
That's a great line.
A journal acts as an evidence-gathering mechanism for your inner life. When you write down your miserable Tuesday, you start to see where the external facts end and where your internal perceptions begin.
Just like Marcus Aurelius did with the plague.
Exactly like that. You catch yourself choosing misery, and in that space, you realize you have the power to choose strength instead.
You are the variable. That is the synthesis of everything we've explored today.
It all comes back to that.
The anxiety you feel is living in your own perceptions. The belief you are holding on to is outlasting the evidence only because you are letting it. The misery you feel is costing you just as much energy as strength would. You have to hiss if you need to protect your boundaries, but you have to stop biting and hurting people.
It's entirely about recognizing what is within your power and deciding what you're going to do with it.
So to you listening, whatever you're doing next, whether you are prepping for a massive meeting, trying to catch up on a complex new field, or just dealing with a deeply frustrating neighbor, remember that you have ultimate jurisdiction over your own response. You are the variable.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over that builds on what we've discussed.
Please do.
If Carlos Castaneda is right, if making ourselves miserable and making ourselves strong genuinely require the exact same amount of work, what is the hidden payoff we are getting from choosing misery?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Why do we so often prefer the exhausting, familiar work of being unhappy over the equally exhausting work of being strong? What is that misery protecting us from?
I want to warmly invite you to sit with that question today. Think about it the next time you feel yourself putting on a performance or ignoring the hard evidence right in front of you. Remember the core question we started with. Who exactly are you? Thank you for exploring these incredible sources with us today. Until next time.